Hi there, everybody, and welcome to the regularly scheduled DSCA Board meeting of January 4th, I guess, and welcome Camden. So good to see you. I am not seeing everybody on Zoom, so maybe you guys can give me some help along the way. So, okay, hi, Judy. Shall we start by declaring a quorum? And by my count, it looks like we've got everybody. Is that right?
We got 9 counting you.
Okay.
On our way.
Okay, that's right. Okay, so we're good to go with the quorum, folks. Let's kick off then by the approval of the minutes. Those were circulated, and I was wondering, are there any comments, corrections, edits to those?
Yeah, excuse me. I understood that this was only on members of board of directors, also for designated representatives of the association that we're part of, LBD. And I see the name of a person called Mark Grant. He is not a member of our board. He's not a designated representative.
Yes, Victor, I did see your email. I'm sorry I didn't respond, but our protocol is members, not just of the board, but members of residents. Say we've got Renaissance residents who attend, even though they aren't the board designees. So we've got a long-standing practice of being inclusionary with members of the condo building, regardless if they're on the board or not. Does that work?
I didn't understand that based upon the information I've been
Yeah, so those individuals would not represent your condo board, but they would be observers, so as to speak. So that's a long-standing tradition of being inclusive, so as to speak, from an observer standpoint. So
any member of our association and BOBD can come to any one of these meetings at any time and be in a.
As long as it's not a closed meeting where attorney privileges are being discussed.
No problem. If that's the way the rules are, then we'll.
Yep.
Make sure.
yeah, and again, these folks are observers just to participate. So it's a long-standing kind of practice.
Just so you would expect, your records, the documents that you send out, do not say that. They simply say that the only persons who are to be here are those individuals who are designees, members of the board, or presidents of the board of directors of a particular association. No problem.
Or invited guests.
Or invited guests.
Yeah, and I have made it a practice of kind of having an open invitation to resident members of condo buildings. And again, they do not speak and do not, of course, represent your board, for example, but are available to observe.
Great.
Okay. And let me just ask, yes, Patrick.
Before we go, let me just recognize another guest, actually a resident guest. Commissioner Liz Albert is joining us here. David.
Hello, Hello, Vice Mayor. Thanks for coming. And by the way, are there any new, well, we'll recognize 2 new condo members as we go along here, but let's for now look at the minutes. Were there any comments on the minutes, corrections? If I hear none, may we have a motion to adopt, please?
So moved.
Okay, in a second.
Right here, Kathy.
Oh,
Kathy's
okay. Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Okay, approved, unanimous. To Treasurer's report. Clark, what do you have for us, please?
We have $7,233.64 in the Seacoast chapter as of this afternoon.
Okay. And what, do we want to cover the budget later in the meeting? Is that where we've got it?
Yeah, after the guest speakers.
Okay, all right. Okay, with that said, I'm happy to introduce Camden Mills. Camden is the manager of capital projects for the city. And with him is Nick Patel, who we've heard speak before. But Camden, it occurred to me when I thought of inviting him, plays a really, really important role in the city in the implementation of capital improvement programs, and particularly this time of year as FY24 budgets are coming before us. It seemed to be kind of timely to meet him and have him make remarks, and then he and Nick have agreed to be available for questions. Camden has fairly recently been promoted, congratulations, and comes with I've circulated his bio, so we know he comes well qualified from an engineering background. And again, his role is a kind of an unsung hero of sorts in the background of a lot of stuff that's critically important to DSCA. So without further ado, and Camden and I have been in communication, he'll be making remarks for 15 minutes or so, and then we'll move into a question and answer period. So Camden, welcome, and take it away.
Thanks, David, and good evening, everyone, and thanks for having me here today. As you guys are aware, DSCA is comprised of about 12,000 residents and very concentrated, less than 2 square miles. So you guys play a very critical part in our city and, constitute a big part of our citizenship. So it's great to have the opportunity to come here and connect with you guys and share what our capital projects division has in the works. I got a slideshow presentation here so you guys can follow along as I go through this. I'll be covering a pretty large amount of information this afternoon, so I ask that you please withhold any questions to the end, and then me and Nick will be here to help field those. And I'm more than happy to share this presentation with any of you guys afterwards, so you can follow up with me if you have any additional questions after this meeting. Just to give you a little bit of sorry.
Let's see if they can. I don't know if that can be zoomed out. As long as they can see. It's too big.
Yeah.
Just share the. There we go. Then I'll just press this one. There we go.
So to give you guys a brief background info, thanks for introducing me, David. So I was born and raised in this area. I come from Bradenton, Florida. I graduated from the University of Florida in civil engineering. I'm a licensed professional engineer in the state of Florida. I previously worked in the private sector, specializing in land development for commercial and residential developments, primarily throughout Southwest Florida. And I have experience with the planning, engineering, design, and construction of private sector and public sector capital projects. My role at the city, as David mentioned, I joined recently in July 2021, so I've been here about a year and a half. And I serve as the operations or production manager for the capital projects division of our public works department. So to give you an agenda of some of the topics I'll be covering today, I'll go over a high level overview of what our capital project division consists of, give you guys a description of our 5-year capital improvement program. So we'll have that.
Maybe it's just.
To resize, I'm not sure on which, why it's resizing, so.
That's fine.
I can keep going. Let's see.
Yeah, keep-
Okay. And so I want to give you a brief overview of what the capital projects division consists of, give you a description of our 5-year CIP program, go over the budget calendar and how our CIP process goes into adoption, talk about some of the downtown capital projects we currently have in the works, go over some upcoming regulation updates that'll affect this area, and then also have a question and answer period at the end for y'all. So give you an update on what our capital division consists of. This is under the city engineer. It's a branch of our public works department. And under our city engineer, we have 5 main divisions. Engineering, who handles the private development and the permitting review. Our transportation planning, who heads the projects up from the very beginning stages. Our surveying department, our capital projects, which is what I'm in, and then our infrastructure and right-of-way maintenance. So over our capital projects division, we take projects over from the 30% design phase and onward. So anything that gets past the planning stage, we take on and then we see it through construction. But with that, we work hand in hand with all the various divisions that are under the umbrella of the city engineer. We're comprised of engineering technicians, project coordinators, inspectors, designers, as well as other professional engineers. And ultimately, we're responsible for implementing the capital improvement plan, overseeing the design of capital projects, and assisting in the development of our 5-year program. So our current 5-year capital improvement program is about $224 million. Of that, this year's plan for fiscal year 22-23 is about just more than $47 million. There's several sources of funding for this program. Penny sales tax, the gas tax, multimodal transportation impact fees, alternative sources such as state appropriation and grants, among other sources of funding. And we break our CIP program into various project categories. You can kind of see here on this graph, but they range from environmental preservation and sustainability, residents and neighborhoods, growth and development, operations and administration, city-owned facilities, parks and rec, and then our water and sewer, drinking water, and administration for that department. On our current 5-year program, which takes us out through 2027, we have over 100 projects identified in that plan. Among that, over 40 of those projects are going to be directly managed by the Public Works Department and come through our Capital Projects Division. Next, I want to talk about our budget calendar and how we formulate our CIP program. This is a 5-year program, but it's something that gets updated annually each year. In that calendar, as you can see, it's pretty much a year-long process. We start early on. In this phase, city staff is gathering requests that we're going to put forth onto our next budget request. And in February, all the departments in the city have that initial budget kickoff meeting where it really starts to get things going. You'll see in July, we have time dedicated for city commission budget workshops. This is a very important time frame. This is the opportunity when we get the residents' input and they can share that with our commissioners and our constituents and help develop, the program that needs to best serve everyone. So those 2 budget workshops, they will be held this year. The dates are to be determined, so stay informed, and we'll try and put that information out as soon as we get it, so we can make sure we're involved our residents. But as you can see, throughout the year, there's different stages of how this CIP program is being developed. Next, I want to talk about some of the downtown capital projects that we have underway right now. First, I'll get into a couple that were recently completed. Next, please. First of those is the Ringling Trail project. This project added a protected bicycle lane on Ringling Boulevard between Pineapple Avenue and Lime Avenue. We asked, with new drivers, this is a big change. This is the first kind of complete streets protected bicycle trail in this region, really. So we're kind of hitting the forefront here for this area. We ask that you please be alert and cautious as drivers and cyclists adjust to this new traffic pattern. It will be a little bit of a learning curve, but overall, it's going to provide enhanced safety for pedestrians as well as our bicycle riders. And we'll be looking at a future CIP request to enhance this project even further, take it to the next stage, provide additional landscape islands, provide additional medians, improve transit accommodations, as well as other safety operations and aesthetics. So this is a project that we see developing over the course of many years as more funding becomes available. Another project I want to touch on that is currently under construction that I'm sure you guys are all very aware of is the US 41 Gulfstream Roundabout. That became operational just before Christmas. So now you can fully use the operation of the traffic circle. So pretty soon we'll start to see impacts and how this will positively impact traffic throughout this region. And again, with that, we ask that you please be alert and approach with caution. You as users adjust to the new traffic pattern. Observe signage, watch for pedestrians, and make sure to yield to vehicles that are currently. In this project right now, the roadway portion of it is anticipated to be completed in January, February of this year. Then they'll be moving into the landscape portion of it, which will be in the surrounding area and then in the center of the circle. That will be letting in February of this year and will be turned over towards the end of this year in November. And this project, or this roundabout, is also identified in our city's artwork and roundabout project. So we may be seeing, some artwork sculpture going in here in the future. Another project I'd like to talk about, which is away from the construction phase, but into the procurement phase. So these are projects that we have shovel ready to move forward towards construction. We're just working through getting the contracts out and getting the contractors on board so we can start construction. First of those is 10th Street and US 41 roundabout, where we'll be putting an art sculpture in the center of that roundabout. There'll be a series of retaining walls that are tiered at different levels in the center of the roundabout to help protect the sculpture. And ultimately, we see this project as serving as a component of speech management. It'll help to slow the traffic and also promote placemaking efforts. This project was designed and coordinated with the Florida Department of Transportation, since it is within their roadway. And this will be one of the first artwork in the roundabout projects on a state road. So again, we're kind of setting the bar here in the city of Sarasota. For the 10th Street roundabout, it's going to be a 20-foot high art piece on a 15 concrete base. We're looking to bid this construction in early 2023, starting construction around April and May, finishing up around August, September, and making sure that art piece is installed before next season comes around so we're not impacting season's traffic. Along the lines with 10th Street, we're also doing the same thing at 14th Street. That's going to be another 20-foot high sculpture. The difference here on this project, other than the art piece itself, is we're doing a circular retaining wall design that, again, will be step tiered up. And it's going to improve landscaping, irrigation, lighting. So it's really going to help enhance that corridor.
Camden, have the art pieces been selected?
They have been selected, and they're both being manufactured as we speak. And one of those is actually coming from Spain. So you can imagine the coordination between not only the metric and imperial unit conversions, but also just dealing with a sculpture from Spain getting over here. It'll be a fun project for sure. Next will be the Ringling Boulevard and Pine Place roundabout. This is another one that we'll be looking to bid out for construction fairly soon. This is a project that we joined up with FDOT. It's part of their local agency program where they'll do provide funding and help facilitate a project on local roads. So this will be a really great joint partnership with them. But again, this is to remove a signalized span wire intersection and replace it with a modern roundabout. The limits of this project will extend to the roundabout on Orange Avenue, and we'll be tying it into the recent improvements with the Ringling Trail to maintain the consistent bike corridor throughout. Next one is a connected and autonomous vehicle pilot. Again, this is a project that we're teaming up with FDOT, and is really a pilot project to install new and emerging technologies for transportation management within the city. Overall, we've identified 91 priority intersections that we want to have this program in. We're getting ready to move forward into the first phase of that, which hits 15 intersections. So on this map here, you can see where those are. The technology that's going to be part of this program essentially is just cameras and data sensors installed on existing infrastructure. This equipment will be purchased by FDOT. They're going to provide the equipment, the software, the support hardware, and in the city, it'll help the city help monitor traffic conditions, providing messages to the traveling public through the equipment that have autonomous vehicles that are able to accept this. So it's really, taking to the next step into the future on providing safe mobility. This project will provide real-time information messaging disseminated to traveling public, and FDOT and the city will keep track of that. The type of message that these sensors will pick up include roadside alerts, traveling information message, intersection movement assistance, work zone signage, school zone warnings, collision avoidance, and pedestrian warnings. So for instance, if a pedestrian accidentally steps out in front of the intersection, camera's going to pick up on that. It'll send the alert to your vehicle, and your vehicle will say, hey, warning, we need to stop. So it's really cutting edge technology that we're looking to move forward with here. Next, I want to get into a few projects that we have that are in the design phase that aren't quite ready to be implemented in the field, but we're getting close. One of them is a smart city initiative. It's a sea level rise and red tide monitor initiative that we're working on with Moat Marine Laboratories. The purpose of this project is to collect more data on red tide and water quality and sea level rise, to help us in early prevention and mitigation techniques to start attacking red tide before it gets here, and also being able, help us when to identify, when to respond, and developing methods for cleanup and debris elimination. That way, when the blooms come in and impact our areas, we want to minimize that as much as possible. We're hoping this collaboration with Moat will create a better platform for the public and our decision makers. We want to expand the coverage of an existing system that Moat already has, their beach conditions reporting system, and integrate our reporting data for red tide into that. So essentially the public will have one public facing platform that they can access to find out conditions of our beaches, all our right-of-ways or road waterways, and how impact of red tide or any other sea level rise is in the area. Next, I want to talk about extension of Legacy Trail through Payne Park. We're calling this project the Alderman Multi-Use Recreational Trail. The design for this project has been completed. We're currently applying for a grant for construction funding. We've been told that we will be awarded that grant, so our next phase will be to move forward with an environmental clearance report that's required per the grant, and once that's completed, we'll be ready to move forward with construction. So we see that happening again later towards the end of this fiscal year, and that'll pick up from the Legacy Trail, where the county recently completed here on School Avenue. We'll be picking it up there, taking it along the south side of Payne Park, and then over to Alderman. Just another connection of our bike facilities that we're filling in the gap. Ultimately trying to get as many people as we can from the Legacy Trail to downtown and ultimately up to the bay and our barrier islands. The next project I want to discuss, which I'm sure you guys are all very interested in, is the Boulevard of the Arts and 10th Street Complete Streets. So as you know, the limits for both of these projects, for the 10th Street goes from 41 to Orange Avenue, and for Boulevard of the Arts is from the bay just past Orange Avenue. Previously, we had applied for a federal grant last year for this project to get funding for additional design and for construction. We were awarded a Project of Merit Award, and the US DOT invited us to reapply this next cycle. So we're hoping our application will get approved this time around, and we really think it's going to be a strong candidate. Some proposed improvements you'll see on this project: intersection and streetscape improvements, reduced pedestrian crossing distance at crosswalks, wider sidewalks, separated and protected bicycle lanes, and undergrounding of utilities. This project is identified by the city as a 2023 state appropriations priority project. So we're asking for some state appropriations here. Go to the next slide, please. Some of the work that's already been completed on this project so far is we've had our initial community survey and outreach to get some of the needs and wants of what the residents want to see along these corridors. We've retained a design consultant to take us up through that planning phase through the 30% phase. That 30% design has been completed along with some long-range estimates and some typical sections and concepts. So we're using that new information to help beef up our grant application for this next go around. And then from now, we'll be taking it from the 30% phase on. That'll be initiated this spring. Please. So our next step is moving to phase 2 this spring. That'll include more public outreach, an environmental socioeconomic review for federal requirements, as well as taking things up to 60% design. So getting away from the concept level and getting more into the nitty gritty of how this is actually going to work with our existing infrastructure.
Are there going to be more roundabouts on City Street?
We're looking right now at putting one on Orange.
Okay.
Orange and 10. Next project I want to get into is Main Street Complete Streets. Potential improvements we can see from this project include conversion from angled to parallel parking, widened sidewalks, landscape enhancement, and we're also going to consider pedestrian malls at certain times and locations. Again, this project is at the very preliminary stage, so we're going to go through the planning and the public outreach before we get into the detailed design. So really, this project is going to be head up more from our transportation planning division, but through that, capital project stays involved throughout the development of all of these projects, so we can make sure engineering and planning are working hand throughout. And again, Main Street, similar to Boulevard of the Arts, is identified as a city priority project for 2023 state appropriations. Next, I want to talk about our Fruitville Road and US 41 roundabout community aesthetic feature. This is similar to the project I previously discussed at 10th and 14th Street, where we're looking to put artwork sculptures in the center of the roundabout. Right now, our public art committee has selected 3 finalists to design the art piece. So once the public art committee and our city commission decides on the artists that we're going to move forward with, then we'll start working with a consultant to design and permit this. So the Fruitville Road, it's a little further down the line. It won't be this fiscal year that we'll see it, but probably next year in 23-24, we'll see the design and permitting of this come online. And again, this is a project that's identified in the city's Art and Roundabouts program. Next project I want to talk about is Coconut Avenue and 2nd Street roundabout. We're looking at installing a new modern roundabout at the intersection of Coconut and 2nd to improve vehicle flow and pedestrian safety. Some potential improvements you can see with this are landscape center islands, public art, reduced pedestrian crossing distance, as well as traffic calming. So again, this is a project that's early on in the planning stages. This is a preliminary concept you see here in the graphic, but we look probably next fiscal year, we'll be getting into the design, and then a year after that, we'll be moving towards construction. But this is in our Sarasota in Motion Transportation Master Plan for the city of Sarasota. This was identified as a high priority project. Next, I want to get into Fruitville Road Complete Streets. So this is a project that's been talked about for a long time now in the past. And our city administration has requested that we reevaluate this project and start looking at potential options and solutions to improve this corridor. We'll be submitting requests for our upcoming CIP program to include this program, this project further down the line. As you can see here in this graphic, we're looking at starting the planning and conceptual development and public outreach in fiscal year 23-24, and then in subsequent years moving towards engineering and construction. Our goals right now for this project are to improve pedestrian connections between the downtown and the Rosemary district while maintaining vehicle level of service. We want to replace existing signal poles and create a livable urban space that's more accessible for the public. Potential improvements you may see are ADA improvements, widened sidewalks, layer-on lane width to accommodate those wider, safer sidewalks, improved crossings at Coconut, Lemon, Central, and Orange, high visibility pedestrian crosswalk markings, bike detection at the traffic signals, enhanced transit accommodation at bus stops, and develop parallel bikeways between 2nd Street and 4th Street. So again, this is a project that we're evaluating to try and incorporate into our CIP program as we move forward. The next project I want to talk about is the Rosemary Park Pocket Park. So this is occurring, on city-owned property, but this really is a private-public partnership. It's really a cool project to see come into fruition. The public survey was previously conducted. With that, the consultant that was retained developed 3 different concepts. So the results of the survey were shared to utilize and understand identified features and components. And concept A is more of an urban design. The concept B is more of an artful design, and concept C is more tranquil design. So the public submitted survey, provided their inputs on which of these designs they like. Kimberly Horn, the design consultant, are going to take those survey results from the 3 ideas, try to refine that into 2. And then it looks like they'll be submitting more information to the city early this month, or by the end of this month, actually, to see where this project's going forward into the next steps. So I encourage you guys to visit rosemarypark.org for more information on this project. And as I mentioned, later this month, the city should have a better idea on where we're narrowing down these 3 concepts. And a couple projects I don't have slides for, but that are in the works, just to put you guys on notice for. It's 2nd Street and Orange Avenue. And fiscal year 23-24, we'll be looking to add that into our program for planning, engineering, and design of safety improvements. And then US 41 at Main Street and US 41 at Ringling Boulevard. Ultimately, we'd like to put roundabouts at both of those areas. Those are identified in the Florida Department of Transportation and the Metropolitan Planning Organization's long-range transportation plan. So both those roundabouts are something that we look to start the planning on in fiscal year 24-25, and probably construction wouldn't come around until 2030 because those will be big projects. Some regulation updates we have in the works that our capital projects division has their hand in. First off is the engineering design criteria manual. So the city's updating the EDCM to improve the quality of design in the community. This is the design standard manual that's used by private and public sector engineers to develop within the right-of-way and also develop within private property. So it affects, capital projects when we're designing, within our right-of-way for roadways and things like that, but also the developers that are working on other condos and residential developments in the area. The last update of this manual took place in 2002, so we're due for a reboot here. The new EDCM will support the city's vision for a world-class community and treasure destination with enduring beauty, charm, and diversity. The EDCM is actively in the revision process through this October 2023. During this time, the city will be collecting recommendations for the changes to sections of the EDCM. We're planning on holding 3 public meetings throughout the process. We've had our first public meeting earlier in 2022. Purpose of this meeting was to inform the public of what the city is doing, present the findings of the existing conditions analysis, some of the best practices, and discover some opportunities for design standards updates. Really, we met with a lot of different people, part of this, residents, stakeholders, developers, engineers, really everyone that's involved with this manual provided their input. And it was good to see, some of the infrastructure challenges within the community that we can improve on with this manual update. So our next meeting will be in May of 2023. So I encourage all of you to attend that so we can talk about some of the potential changes that we're proposing to move forward with here and get your feedback on that. And the next regulation update I want to discuss with you all is the multimodal transportation impact fees. So the multimodal impact fees is revenue generated from new development. Typically, this ranges about $750,000 to $1.2 million a year of revenue generated. The program expenditures currently provide funding for our advanced traffic management system, 2nd Street and Orange intersection improvements, our legacy trail network, multi-use recreational trails, and bike route improvements. Public Works Department and our Planning Department, we're going to be looking at the previous impact fee study that was conducted in the current ordinance that's in place and revisit those. We're looking to provide some clarification on the usage, and updates on the fees, and then also designate the projects that from this fee is generated towards. So again, I ask you guys to please, stay involved through our city's outreach, so we can get your feedback. Have our public meetings at that time. And with that, I'll open it up for some questions and answers. And again, I ask you guys, please follow our city website and our social media pages, so you can get the latest information from us. Up here is my contact information. Feel free to reach out to me to discuss any of these projects or any other projects that you'd like to see come on board in the future. And again, I can't stress it enough to please stay engaged, actively participate, and provide your feedback, because ultimately help decisions get made.
Hey, Camden, thanks so much. That was terrific, just first class. As promised, can we open it up for questions from board members who might have a question or a comment to make?
Absolutely. Yep, we got a couple of hands raised here already.
Okay, okay. Yeah, Ken, I think I see you. Yes.
I'm usually in a hole in the ground. I understand that, but Camden, when you were talking about the Main Street project, you used the phrase pedestrian malls. Can you explain that?
Sure. So a pedestrian mall is more of an area that, we wanted to have special events. We could close it down for traffic, so it would be the road strictly being able to use for pedestrians.
Would that be on Main Street or one of the side streets like Lemon or?
It's to be determined at this point. It's just kind of a concept idea that we want to consider.
Yeah, it's similar to like farmer market, when you close it down. So I mean, it's more.
It would not be a permanent thing. It would be.
Well, I mean, it's all going to be evaluated. I mean, what we're hearing is different merchants have different views of it. Condos have different views on it. So what we want to do is, we're still in the early stages. What we want to do is we want to use the public and really get some feedback as to what they would like to see Main Street, as we develop it and complete streets.
It's actually an old concept that Gil Waters promoted years ago. I don't know whether that name means anything to you, but he led the creation of the new Ringling Bridge. He was on the city commission back in the 50s. He had a lot to do with the way the Bayfront looks today. And he wanted to create a pedestrian mall, Main Street downtown, like the European cities.
And if I just may add, in around 2010, 11, this group, as well as other members downtown, when we were looking at the redo of Lower Main Street, we had in that design hydraulic walls that would rise and block off the traffic that was killed in that design. But we were looking at having pedestrian malls on a Saturday, and you just raise the bollards and cut off the traffic. So some of this stuff may be in your historical record and save a little time.
Yeah, I mean, so all options we're going to evaluate just for Main Street, and we just want feedback as to what the locals or our communities receptive.
Good. And then moving along, Kathy.
Yeah, one clarification on the 10th Street and Freeone. I'm sorry, Boulevard of the Arts and 10th Street. You said 60% completion. You talked about 30%, 60%. Is there do you have a timeline for that 60% completion? And I might have missed it if it was on there.
Not yet.
Okay, it's not going to be this year, or we're looking down the road for that. Is that correct?
It probably wouldn't be this year. Probably bleed into next year, but right now that's to be determined. Right now we're putting the scope together to send out for a consultant to take it from the 30 to 6% phase. So during that negotiation is when we'll determine that schedule.
Let me clarify that. The intent right now is that we have a USDOT grant that we're submitting for.
Okay.
And based on, we're hoping to hear back later this year.
Okay.
And in the interim, we're going to continue on to 60% design. And our plan is to get it done by the end of the year, by end of calendar year. Okay. So if we do hear back from the feds about getting the grant, that we have options right now.
Sure, right.
Nick, I was just gonna ask you to speak up more when you're.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so what I was
Okay.
gonna say was that we submitted a grant. We're gonna be submitting another grant again with USDOT for 10th and Boulevards of Arts. And in the interim, Camden and his team is gonna hire a consultant, get it to 60%. And by the time we hear back from USDOT, we're hoping that if we were to get the grant, that we have options available to start construction potentially.
Essentially, it'll be shovel ready.
Shovel ready.
Okay. And then the other quick
Okay.
question on that was the alley restoration. We talked about that. That's not in this at all? Is that something that's like in the EDM? It's been brought up before by Eric Arroyo and
You mean,
Wilson.
yeah, so the alleys, we are going to look at the design internally. We're looking at one option. Again, we're still, and my thought is the Main Street, as we're developing the complete street side of it, we also want to kind of evaluate the alleys because they are playing it is interesting to see how alleys are playing a different role today. A lot more pedestrian activities are happening on alleys. So, that's also going to be considered as part of Main Street, complete streets, as we look at the alleys.
Okay. Nick, I had one. I think this comment is no surprise to you, but in the CIP for this year, there's penny tax money in to help fund Boulevard of the Arts and 10th. I'm some concerned that we might be putting all of our eggs in the basket of getting grants. Are you seeing a additive kind of approach as a possibility where we have penny tax, multimodal fees, and a grant to help fund some of these projects?
Yeah, good question. And what's different with this infrastructure bill that we had compared to previous infrastructure bills is that there's a lot more skin in the game. And what I mean by that is that, USDOT likes to see local municipalities, counties, or state to provide a match. So what the challenge is in the past, they used to just give you the money and say, here's money to build the projects. Now they want us to see, hey, what match do you have? And usually, depending on the grants, it's 80-20, 60-40, depending on which grant you're looking at. So, if you really want to transform the corridors the way you really want to transform the corridors, it's going to take a lot of, it's going to be a high construction dollars. So our thought is that we have to leverage the infrastructure bill in the next 5 years to transform some of these roadways that we have, like 10th and Boulevards of Arts, for example.
Would that be designated grants or block grants?
It's a raised grant. So USDOT has multiple different grants.
Because they didn't write in the block grants in the new infrastructure bill.
Okay, I'm afraid time-wise, we have time for one more question. Do we have anybody?
Thank you so much, Nick and Cameron. Nick, we've talked a lot.
Yeah.
In the original master plan, there was a RIV, a roundabout at Boulevard of the Arts and Tamiami Trail. As a matter of fact, the Conservancy leaders stressed that due to complaints about high traffic, it was one of the central ideas that was being pushed. When did that roundabout disappear? Because it's not there anymore. We don't know whether or not there's ever been a change. Nobody ever informed us the roundabout was going to be taken out of master plan. It is in the master plan. There's no doubt about that. Why was it taken out? And let me preface that by saying, I'm kind of disabled, and I've tried to cross that street, and I know how dangerous it is. Let me put you on one leg and see how easily you get across. So my suggestion is, where is my roundabout?
And that's the question, and I'm just going to state the facts the way they are. So originally there was a plan to do a roundabout. So Kimley Horn did. We had a consultant put a concept together, and long story short is that it would require eminent domain or private property in order for us to really construct the roundabout. And due to how quickly the Quay lot wanted to get developed, and at the end of the day, based on the land that we need to build a roundabout, we just don't have the land to build a roundabout. That's the essential, facts right now, is that we just don't have the city doesn't have or the DOT does not have the land to construct that roundabout.
You have major traffic concerns coming in, that both pedestrian traffic, you got roughly 2,000 to 3,000 new units coming up. You made Boulevard of the Arts one of the principal walkways, and yet the one thing that you have emphasized throughout the course of this meeting is the importance of roundabouts. And you've done a wonderful job, except at the one place where you originally planned to do it. Now, please explain that to me so I can go back to the folks from BLPD and explain the reason why the master plan doesn't seem to work for us, because, we're right there on that square, but it does seem to work for every place else.
It's the land's not there. I'm just being direct, But what we are going to do is do an option B, which we're working with the DOT to do a raised intersection. And a raised intersection is an alternative to it's not, unfortunately, it's not the roundabout, but it is going to be something else to ensure pedestrians feel safe to go across US 40.
Nigel and Camden, is there any reason why the city would not engage in eminent domain in order to make sure that a safe roundabout was there in place of a raised area, which may not really be good enough until the first 3, 4, 5, 6 of us get killed?
I mean, we can certainly ask the DOT to do it, and we can, I'll recommend, talk to commission at this point, but I mean, unfortunately, we just don't have the land. That's a reality. That's where it gets back into that situation. Now, as far as, I'm not pushing the eminent domain side of it, it's a matter of if we can get the land, and part of the land is the Quay's developing that portion of that land.
Well, actually, under the discussion of that roundabout area, it wasn't that we didn't have the land. We had the land. We didn't have the finances. That land became so expensive that even on the eminent domain, we couldn't afford to buy the extra pieces of land. The land's there, but it's prohibitively cost because it's so valuable to developers. That's the real reason. Land is there. The finance, enough money to buy that land is not there.
That's correct.
Did the DOT, either federal or state, already approve that roundabout as it was originally going in the master plan?
It's in their work program plans, but they haven't even started the planning side of it, so it hasn't been funded.
Okay, hey, folks, this is Victor. Thanks for bringing that up, and I'm afraid we're running out of time here. But I've first of all, the presentation, Camden, was incredibly informative. I've got some comments and questions, and I think I will take it on me to kind of pull other board members, possibly to come back to you with some comments and questions for clarification. But I think your presentation was just first class. It hit on all cylinders, the things that downtown residents, I think, are interested in, and it was very clear. So would you please send the presentation to me if okay, and then we can share it around.
David, we have a copy here, so I'll do that.
Okay.
PDF and our online link on our newsletter where we recap the meeting.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, Nick and Camden, thank you very much. And as promised, we will let you guys go now. You're welcome to stick around, but if you've got other things to do, you're welcome to leave. We appreciate you being with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Appreciate
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Thank
Thank you. The next order of business, we have one new gold member. Kevin, is Kevin Quick in the audience?
Yes, Kevin, if you want to come up from the front here.
Yeah. Kevin, I've gotten to know Kevin over the last few years where he's helped me and the Rosemary Association and DSCA with drone and photography work. And I was so pleased that his business, Photo SRQ, was interested in becoming an associate member. So protocol wise, Patrick, do we need to vote to accept Kevin? Okay. Okay.
Make a motion to accept Photo SRQ as a gold associate.
Second.
Okay, I think everybody's in favor of this by consensus. Kevin, welcome to the fold, and you've got 2 or 3 minutes to tell us about your business.
Sure. My name is Kevin Quick, the owner of Photo SRQ. I think some of you might have seen some of my work before. Let's see. I'm from Chicago originally. I moved here 7 years ago. David had suggested that I join the DSCA, and thought it'd be a cool idea. That presentation was awesome. I didn't know like any of that stuff, so I'm excited to have stuff like that going on. A little bit about my business. Photography company. I mostly work with real estate agents, a lot of architectural stuff, but kind of moving more towards other commercial ventures and stuff like that. Yeah, I feel like I found the best seat in the house over there.
Red chair.
I'm looking around, it's the only one. I'm like, it's my first board meeting, maybe it's just a new member thing. But I don't have much more to say other than that. You check out my website, photosrq.com, Instagram page, anything like that. Do I do a Q&A now?
Yeah, but let me just say, Kevin does terrific drone work. He's been very, very resourceful and responsive. So if anybody needs drone work or photography work, highly motivated. His editing is fantastic, and I would really endorse and recommend it. So.
And you're welcome to come back in the future board meetings. We have the gold and platinum speak for up to 60 minutes on news items. So if you have something new to bring back, perfect. And then stick around for the social. Thank you.
I think I'll definitely need to come back because I didn't bring a single business card. Thank you.
Okay, Kevin, thanks. And now we have 2 new member condo buildings. Pardon?
We seconded the motion, but I didn't.
Oh.
Take a vote.
Okay, so we second the motion. Do we have a vote on this? Okay. Accept Kevin as a new gold member. So, all right. Unanimous. Okay. All right, moving ahead, we have 2 new condo member buildings. And the first is Risden on 5th. We're really excited to have them join DSCA. And is Jim, I'm forgetting his surname, is Jim in attendance?
Anyone from Risden out there? No.
Oh, okay. Well, they have applied and I believe paid at this point. So may we have a motion to accept Risden on 5th?
Do the 2 condo ones together if you want.
Okay, and then the other building is Library Muse. Library Muse is at 2nd and Coconut, and that's 11 townhome units. And I understand they may have been a member some years ago, but have now are rejoining. So do we have a member from Kevin Areem or somebody from Library Muse? No? Okay,
No.
but I go ahead, Patrick.
Motion to accept both Risden on 5th, Library Muse as new condo townhouse members.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right, welcome to them. And just 1 second, folks. Can we move into a discussion about the budget? And as Clark does that with Patrick, I'm going to excuse myself for a minute or two, but I may be listening. But if between Patrick, Jamie, if she's there, and Clark could guide the conversation, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay, take it. Okay.
Well, I thought we went through this at our last meeting.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Now, I guess the question is, if there's any further questions or comments, if not, you can make a motion to approve.
Did we get any feedback on the condo survey, by the way? Or whether the 2,000 would cover?
We did not contact the consultant to do that, just pretty much.
Just wanted to tell you. Should I make a motion to? I make a motion to approve the budget for 2023.
Second.
Yeah, he's out there. So, any comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Vice President, you leading the meeting here? No old business? City updates?
Well, you know, we have a couple of, everyone seems to address things on their particular subcategories, but I do know that there's just a meeting yesterday. They're not up on video, and I missed listening to get to the meeting, so be able to listen to them today. But I will tell you that a couple of things that came out of I brought an email. They're looking for input into the park, like the outdoor dining, and asking people to give input in on that and let the city other thing, I was able to attend a meeting in Park. I talked to you briefly about this with the SPD regarding Elm Melvins. I know that was a big issue, and they are dealing with sound ordinance. Blankets all over the downtown area. So there was something that came up at the city commission meeting that I wish I would have been able to listen to because I was at the original meeting. Unfortunately, we're not getting all the same people at the table at the same time to have a discussion. The one that I went to was with the attorneys and with Elm Melvin's staff, attorneys for Elm Melvin and SPD. And unfortunately, there really wasn't anyone there from 1350 to address that.
This is back in this.
Yeah, but apparently they were at the city commission.
And I talked to the city manager about it today, and we're looking into what we can do to, what device we need to get to measure the sound levels of the base, because that's the biggest problem, so that we can then put that in our ordinance. So, so we are looking to how we can deal with that.
Did they mention the bongos?
Huh?
Did they mention the bongos too?
No, I didn't mention bongos, but.
Yeah.
Okay.
Discussion on
I
it.
get it, that would be really, till 2 in the morning, just that base.
There was, my understanding, I went and talked to our manager, Jason, said that 2 of the most active protesters in the building had a meeting with Elm Melvin's, with the police department.
Yeah, well, I was at that and there was no one there but those people. And so I did try to facilitate and got contact information to try to get those 2 groups together.
Yeah, if I might add something here, I did talk to Pat Robinson this afternoon, and as the vice mayor has said, Bob Fournier is looking into this. The police are aware of it. It was kind of an aha moment to me, this focus on the base level and maybe a loophole, so to speak. But I believe, as the vice mayor has said, it's being looked at. One thing that Pat said, if I heard him correctly, is that they have only had 3 Elm Melvin complaints in the last few months. I don't know what few months mean, but I would encourage that as we try and work our way through this, if there are complaints, shall we say, about them, that they get reported so they get possibly better documented. But I'm encouraged by the short conversation at the commission meeting yesterday, and as the vice mayor said, that it is being looked at maybe somewhat afresh. So
And the only other thing I would have to report on is the La Petite Brassiere that's at the mark, right near the mark. And I know that that was pulled for a city or a workshop or a community public hearing. So that's, you know, down the pike. But I think they all kind of tie in together, and we just need to be aware and advocate for what we want. So.
Well, anecdotally, I could say, David, as you said, the music has been quieter than in the past. We haven't been aware of it as much.
yeah, and Pat tells me that art ovation complaints have died down some, and I believe, Kathy, I don't know about Gator Club issues, but I'm given the impression that things are some better.
I think bottom line, I think what we can all agree on is sometimes it just takes some people to get at the same table with the owners of the building, let them know mitigation can be done. El Melvin's, it sounds like, did a lot to try to mitigate some of the sounds. We had the same thing with Madison's when we first, you know, the mark went up. And it was a simple matter of moving the stage. And sometimes, but you got to get the right people at the table to have that conversation. And so that's
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else, Kathy?
No.
Okay, I think the next item is me. And one of the things, Patrick, if you could screen share what I'm calling a mind map and talk everybody a little bit through this. I hope, is it decently legible to read? Is it reasonably legible?
Some of the big.
From the front row it is.
Okay, well, this was sent to everybody in the background material, and it's my attempt, and thanks to Roger, Peter, and Patrick, and possibly Ken, for providing some input to my work. And I think that what we ended up here with is a decent amount better than the first draft. And the idea here is to capture in one graphic as much as one can about what I'll call DSCA strategy and initiative elements. That sounds like MBA school, but the idea is in kind of one picture, because people these days aren't great readers, to kind of outline some of the things I think we're up to and would like maybe next month to have further conversations to kind of memorialize some of these with agreement. The rectangular squares are elements that are in the works, so as to speak. So for example, you'll see Boulevard of the Arts and 10th Street designs. You'll see the density incentives for affordable housing. Those are kind of in the works, so as to speak. The important projects that are more conceptual in stage are put in cloud-shaped boxes. So for example, Fruitville or Maine or the McCowan parking apartment building concept. And again, I'm trying to work with everybody to kind of build consensus that these are the important elements of DSCA's work. And then use, as you will see, the categories for these are like transportation, green space, arts and culture, where we have existing committee structures. So to work with the chairs of those committee structures to have them work with their committees to kind of flush out details behind each of some of these main elements of DSCA's work. And I'm looking for feedback on comments, better ideas, your reaction to this if you found it helpful, and what might we go from here on it.
Comments from these board members?
One thing I think that I like about the way this is laid out, it really gives you an idea of the different areas that we work or we need people to be engaged on. So it really does give a clearer picture of that.
Now, I think it lays out 10 areas of priority with various sub-activities within the priorities like strategic or health and safety. And it lays out on one page the comprehensiveness of what this board has got to face. And then we can make some selections around that, as David has suggested in the mind map there. I call it a bubble map. But each bubble takes on a different intensity of initiative. Some won't be addressed this year, just by looking at all of those, and allows the board to see on one sheet what we should be focusing on for the next 12 months.
And you know, the other thing, I know I brought this up before, we have such a wealth of resource within our own buildings to help pull people in to give best practices. I mean, we all come from different areas. What works, what doesn't, and just to bring ideas, get people involved.
David, is there a color code to these different colors?
Not really. I started to do that, but then given some input from a few of you in the room, I started to go with the box shape as opposed to the color. And again, this is a draft. I can be refining this. The dotted line signifies, some in the box, something specific is going on. But the colors in of themselves currently do not mean anything. And I was struggling with how do I make it both simple and complete at the same time. And of course, it's a trade-off. And one of my other ideas here was I don't know how to engage with city staff or the commission, individual commissioners or whatever, to share with them when we get to a point to kind of convey to them what we think we're up to, and then get their comments and suggestions for bettering this. But the roots of this to some extent are when Peter said to me over a beer a month or so ago, boy, we have a lot going on. How are we keeping track of this? And that was kind of a call to action for me to try and take a complex, if you will, situation and try and simplify the picture. So that was the idea here. So what I propose is I go away, maybe talk to some of you individually about this, refine this a bit, and then bring it back for some additional conversations, maybe with a page or two of words, re-articulating the DSCA mission and some of our key goals in words, but using this as an exhibit, realizing that this may be the thing that may be more useful. And the other thing is maybe go around and offer to our condo members presentations to their boards of this work for their input. And I'd be volunteering to try and do that in partnership with maybe one or two of you. So it's just not me going and presenting, but we, a couple of us go and make ourselves known to boards that we may have buildings that we may not know as well as others.
So David, this is Patrick, also this leads right into the, the committee structure that we have set up to kind of help focus on each of these key areas. So it's not just the entire board, but it's through those committee groups where they then engage with city staff and have in-depth hour and a half discussions to understand what are the criteria that staff is working on, set up mechanisms for feedback with residents. And so this, I think, helps, as you said, on one page, give a picture into what we've done in the past has been like our committee goals and action strategies, actions for each year. So I think this gives a way to begin to see the whole picture together. Thank you for doing this.
Okay, any other comments other than it's on me to kind of refine this a bit and take into Clark's comments about maybe there's so many colors here that it becomes confusing.
The aesthetic is great.
Make it easy to read.
I just, I understand now that this is all Peter's fault, so.
Well,
I think it's
The
great.
good idea is David's, the problem with it is Peter's.
It would be nice if there were some sort of reference points in here. What we've done already, what we have, discussions that we've had about this. Does that make it too complicated or too?
yeah, well, let me give thought. I mean, it's a balancing act between thoroughness and timelines and simplicity. So let me try and thread the needle on this. I guess there could be a case that you do two versions of this, one a little bit more overview and one a little bit more in the weeds. But let me try and wrap my mind around that after a Starbucks and see what I can come up with for comment. Okay.
Question of committee chairs who are here. To what extent do we engage non-board members on those committees?
We try to have, well, at least we try to engage other condominium representatives, other members of the condominium. And as it's worked out, that's been a good avenue to look for recruitment of other board members, Catherine.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying I think that it's really important for all of us to look within our own condos and try to find people that have skill sets that we're looking for.
Yeah, we have said that anyone who's a resident within that member condo doesn't have to be a property owner, but if they have an interest in these areas, because sometimes that interest develops into, hey, I want to be a permanent part of this community, sort of thing.
Just
Yes. Question here?
I mean, in terms of people who might want to be interested in the year that I've been involved, I haven't seen a call for people with any specific skill sets to be involved in any specific committees. And I haven't found an opportunity on Zoom to speak up and ask that. But if you can put out a list of what committees are looking for participants and what skill set you need, then that would be helpful.
Good idea.
Yeah, Judy, I know about 6 or 8 months ago, you and I had an initial conversation about this. You did some work, and to be honest with you, I dropped the ball. So I think that between you and me, let's talk a little bit more about that, because one of the things we want to do is in more involvement. We've got some inroads, so as to speak, with new condo members like BLVD. We've got some renewed interest at Renaissance and Alinari, but how do we better involve those folks and plug into skill sets that would add value to our committee structure? So let me work on that. Clearly, we want to add to our bench strength and participation level and ownership of some of these initiatives and where DSCA takes positions or we don't. Okay, so let me
I just
go.
like to a little bit from using that language, skill sets. In other words, we're only looking for people who have specific expertise in this area. What you just really want are willing volunteers. That's more important, that they have background before working on a homeless issue in some other city. You understand? It doesn't have to be that they've got relevant skill sets, experience, etc. I mean, it's part of
this group's opportunity and obligation to train up other people to take on this work in the future.
Good point.
It is a good point. Thank you, Judy. Any more discussion on this for the moment? If not, let's move on to arts and cultural. Ken?
David, excuse me, because it's January, you might want to say something about a board nominating process, because that's supposed to, new directors are supposed to be identified in March if you haven't done it by January by our bylaws. I don't know if that's where you were going with this board nominating process.
Yeah, can you help me out historically on how this was handled and what our bylaws require? I'm having a senior moment and don't have the background knowledge that you, Peter, Ken, and for example, Patrick have on this.
Well, we ought to put out a notice about nominating for board members, because we're supposed to post an annual meeting agenda 60 days before it happens. And of course, that now brings it into March, and the annual meeting is supposed to happen in March. So sometimes we crawl right up to the 31st, and we sometimes make April 2nd the 33rd day of March, but we usually get it done by the end of March. So we need to do something in the next week or so.
Right, and then usually a month, 30 days before the meeting, we send out the proxy to the member representative only, and that is up to that person to sign it and vote. However, they usually have to vote simply to approve the slate of directors. I'm not sure if we have a amendment to the bylaws or some other vote, we include that, but typically it's just the approving the.
And of course, anybody can self-nominate by, or make any nomination that the person agrees to, simply by notifying the secretary of the board of the person's interest to be nominated.
Right. And the only criteria is that they be a property owner of a member condominium to serve on the board.
Yeah.
But we do invite people to sit on the board.
So maybe, David, just maybe Patrick and I can get together and draft something quickly this next week and run it by you and get the process in place.
I would sure appreciate that. And I guess, may I ask at this point, I'm hoping that our current board members are intending to run again, so as to speak. Is there anybody who is interested in rolling off? And again, I hope not, but I think we've had a good group. Maybe we could certainly, for the right individuals, right time, consider additional board members, but I'm hoping that all of us intend to continue for a whole bunch of reasons. Any comments on this?
I just assumed that we're lifetime appointments.
We get a cost of living increase?
Yes, double what you got last year.
Okay, all right. Okay, with that.
Please, just a question for me, just for my own use. Is there access to emails of all the board members? Is that available? If I wanted to send a request to one or another of you, I had a specific question, that is available? Somebody could give me that.
I can make that in.
Whenever we receive something, isn't it? I mean,
Okay.
Well, when David sends out an email, he's copying the
Yeah,
board.
I just want to make sure that.
We do have a board list that we can send official notices to. Sure.
Okay, thank you, Peter and Patrick, in advance for that work. And now moving along, Ken, as far as an update on Arts and Cultural Committee.
Sure. I have several things with respect to the Van Wezel. Some of you may be aware that there have been a flurry of letters between the Van Wezel family members and the Van Wezel Foundation. These letters were triggered by Tony Van Wezel Stone, who misread or misinterpreted the rules with respect to the naming of the foundation. He claimed that in 2019, the name Van Wezel was dropped from the name and they were illegally using it currently. And so there were a flurry of letters, and they ultimately ended up with a letter from Morgan Bentley. And I'm just shocked that Morgan sent out a letter including misinformation that this is going to be the commission's challenge through this whole process with a Van Wezel, because there's so much misinformation floating around, including that 200-page book you got. So anyway, Morgan, the bottom line said he wanted the city to direct your colleagues and constituents, us, to cease using the Van Wezel name with respect to the new Performing Arts Center. So Dan Bailey responded to that January 3rd letter, where he was tweaking Morgan's nose, obviously knowing Morgan was not properly informed about the legality of the use of the name Van Wezel. But anyway, hopefully that stopped. So everybody stop doing that. Don't do it anymore. Okay, yesterday at the city commission meeting, there were 2 items that were discussed by the city commission, one of which was the creation of the Blue Ribbon Committee to decide on repurposing of the existing Van Wezel Performing Arts Hall. The bottom line is the commission decided to have a workshop to discuss things like membership and qualifications and how they were going to process for that committee. So there's no date picked yet for that, so stay tuned. The other thing discussed was hiring a city representative to sit on the architect selection committee. And the commission agreed to allow that. They voted unanimously, I believe, to do that. So that's coming down the pike as well. We currently have no tours of the Van Wezel scheduled because of the performance scheduling at the hall right now. And I hope at some point the board will consider taking a position with respect to a new performing arts hall, because these issues need to be kept separate. What happens with the existing Van Wezel and what happens with respect to a new performing arts hall. That's it.
Okay, and Ken, I want to thank you again for organizing or facilitating those tours. I believe 50 people or so, because of DSCA, got tours, hour and a half tours in the back room, so to speak, of the Van Wezel. And I've heard numerous folks who've taken those tours, report, shall we say, what they saw. I know I learned a lot, but thank you for doing that. I think that was a real service to the community of you and DSCA, so thanks for that.
It's a treat.
Ken, just a quick question. You mentioned that the city commission is setting a workshop date.
Well, they haven't done it
We
yet.
haven't set the date yet.
But is it going to be a workshop?
Yes.
Because if it is, there's no public comment, correct?
Right.
Okay. Should there be something set for public comment, or is that just going to come after the fact?
Oh, there'll be meetings, public meetings about it after, to where it's gonna be discussed, but it just gives us a better way to discuss the options than in a formal meeting. But yeah, there'll be at least, 1 or 2 before it's decided.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, that said, I'm not seeing real well. Is Jamie joined us?
I'm here.
Way in the back.
Way in the back.
Oh, okay, Jamie, Events and Associate Committee, what have you got for us?
So I wanted to discuss the city grant, but Peter brought up a point about the bylaws in it. Does it say that we have to have the annual members meeting in March? Is that something that we can?
Well, that's what our bylaws call for, and we generally have met that.
Okay.
We have done it in April before.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's right. We've done it on the 33rd of March sometime.
Okay. My goodness, it's gonna run into my plans here. So I had brought the city grant, and we didn't actually budget for it because at the last meeting, the idea for what I'm proposing, we would need a vote on, is something that came out of some discussions at our December meeting afterwards, actually, at the social. And I spoke with Nancy Kelly. We do believe we might have an opportunity for the city grant again this year. I have, it's due on January 23rd, so I quickly kind of put this together and had Nancy review it. We're proposing for our annual members meeting a town hall forum, and we're gonna ask the city for a grant for the cost of the venue. The reason why we picked April 11th was you have to use the funds after March 7th, and you have to have so many volunteer hours, and it makes it very difficult to do it in the middle of March. And then we're also planning on probably having an associate members event in March, TBD on the date on that. So the town hall forum will include topics such as best zoning practices, homelessness, pedestrian safety, and walkability. So according to Nancy Kelly, I would need a vote that allows the board approval for submission of a neighborhood partnership grant for $3,000 to host a town hall. So that's what I'm looking for.
What are the three categories again?
We have best zoning practices, homelessness, and pedestrian safety and walkability. And the ideas came from some of the most discussed topics that we have here and what are most important to residents, and kind of came out of the social. So we thought this might be a nice town hall forum, and we'll get speakers for that and just do it at the annual members meeting, because we can't use the money for an event because we can't have sponsors. So that pretty much takes out all our platinum members, and we can't charge admission because it's a city grant. So that's why the annual members meeting tends to be a good way to use those funds.
Okay, regarding your motion for board approval of pursuing the grant, you might simply add inappropriate topics, given that between now and when you submit it, the actual list of topics on the agenda that you're submitting might be slightly different from the examples you're giving us today for the approval.
Those are the ones I gave Nancy, but they could change. They can't change drastically, but yeah, they.
I don't want
sure,
the board vote to lock you in.
Sure, understand.
Only that as you get into the say.
Yeah, Nancy said we would just need a vote on that, so I include that in the minutes today, so it was very important because like I said, it's due on the 23rd. So can't apologize for the late notice, it just was kind of born out of discussions after the meeting in December, so.
So you need a motion now?
Yes.
I move.
I second.
Let's just put it in something. I make Roger, you can make this motion after I try to figure out. Somebody should move that the motion be made to direct the appropriate person or committee on the board to submit a draft of a grant proposal for board approval within whatever timelines it is. So
yes,
just understanding that the board will get a chance to approve whatever you're putting together.
Would we be able to do that by the 23rd? It would have to be January 23rd.
Well, the board may only have 48 hours to review. I don't want to say board approval, I think you said board review, wouldn't it?
Well, board review and approval, we can't, the board can't submit a grant. I mean, somebody can't submit a grant for the board without the board saying, go ahead and submit the grant. I know there are board members here who won't approve something I haven't seen.
Do we have a allowance for approval by email?
Yes.
Yes.
However, my understanding is we need to make it, we have to go through and set that up to do that. Someone has to set that whole mechanism up and check it, and then cajole everyone to please vote that they haven't voted yet, so we can actually get a vote to approve. We can't do that.
So,
Or we can designate our executive committee to approve, which we've done in the past.
Can we just maybe start off and eliminate all that by just asking, is there anyone here right now that would not approve of this without?
I'm happy to send it to anybody who wants it. The draft's already done, so.
I mean, be honest, because I don't want to, I'm just asking, because we could avoid all of that if we just made the motion and did the approval.
It's not offending me any. If you guys want to see it, I'm happy to send it to you.
Yeah, I think it's our fiduciary responsibility to distribute that and get comments back, et cetera. So we can say that, yes, the board has reviewed that. And anyone who has a comment is raised.
Say that you accept Peter's statement of the motion.
Excellent.
Okay, I second. Now we need to take a vote.
Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. Anything else then?
I'll try to.
Oh, Liaison Association.
Yes, thank you.
Associate Liaison.
So, that is another thing we need to take a vote on. If, I don't know, do you want me to bring Annika up here or? Yeah, so come on up. Sorry, I didn't even know you walked in. So in order to, obviously you guys know that Kristen left and I would be, had a meeting with Annika and discussed this with David. Given her strong marketing background, that is a need that we need to fill for, recruiting more, board members especially. So I felt confident in that decision to bring her on in that role. So, is there a motion to approve her?
So moved.
Yes.
Second.
Aye.
We can have a discussion. Are we gonna talk about Annika? Excellent qualifications.
Good luck and congratulations.
I think.
That's all I have for the events and, associate members.
David, you're on mute or you're muted, David?
I don't know if you can hear me.
No, David's muted.
Yep, no, okay, here I am. Sorry. Okay, next up, green space.
Yeah, I've reached out to the current city arborist at the first of the year to get an update on where they stand with some of the projects like the urban forestry project, et cetera. Since we had a change with Mark Miller leading and Donald Lough is the current senior arborist, we're just trying to reconnect and then appropriately we'll hold up status update meetings on those topics.
Okay. And that's it for green space, Patrick?
Yes.
Okay. The next item is zoning. And as we know, that is a open chair at this point. With your advance packet, we circulated a schedule, a timeline for DSCA's process for inputting into the new zoning text amendments that are coming to implement the comp plan changes adopted by the commission a couple months ago. Specifically, the item on the table is density increases in the 4 downtown zones, DTC, E, B, and DTNE. And to help in this process, we held a Zoom meeting on the 21st of December, probably with 10 or 12 folks on that call. We have then subsequently, with Ken's help, with a couple minor edits on mine, we circulated a summary of that meeting with some of the key takeaways. And again, you should have received that with the advance packet. We have a Zoom meeting scheduled with planning staff on January 9th at 2. And we are going to be looking for who would like to be involved in that Zoom. The intention of that January 9th meeting is to help input DSCA comments into what is being potentially proposed by the planning department. Because on January 19th, there is going to be a town hall conducted by planning staff. The audience for the 19th meeting is basically any resident, but with a focus on downtown residents. And we understand that notices in the mail have been sent to, I can't remember what the number is, but thousands of people downtown inviting them to this town hall meeting. And the backdrop of this is, there were concerns, including concerns of mine, when the comp plan changes that became enacted a couple months ago. In the process that led up to that, there were concerns about what degree of meaningful resident input took place in that process. So I think planning staff seem to be committed. I'm very comfortable with the outline we've come up with as a way to input. And the key here is a two-way dialogue, not unduly compressed into a very, very short period of time where staff is just presenting. This is a two-way street with a dialogue going back and forth. Patrick, you had the outline from the Zoom meeting up a moment ago. Ken, others of you, I know Victor was on the call. Are there any further discussion or inputs to that at the moment?
Only thing I could suggest, David, is maybe we'd want to put that outline in the newsletter this month so that the membership sees what we're talking about.
Okay. And again, the meeting on the 9th, so we can maybe have further information as our newsletter goes out, presumably around the 15th. So, and that would be in advance of trying to drive people to this town hall on the 19th. The town hall is going to be at City Hall, and again, run by Steve Cover's planning group. So I'm feeling pretty good about the process that we're going to have for us to provide input and comments and questions, possibly concerns about what may be being discussed. Any further thoughts, Patrick? Anybody?
David, so the meeting notes you drafted up and were included in the board packet here, was your plan to send that to the city staff prior to the meeting next week?
Oh, yeah, I think it would probably be a good idea. I haven't at this point, but if there's consent, give them a heads up on what we're coming to talk about, right?
Good idea.
Yep. And
One second, yeah, Vic has a question.
Yeah, no question.
Oh, sorry.
Just speaking as a designated representative.
Yes, sir.
You all would have to leave public information that and I think that so many of the homeowners here, if they knew that they could actively come to the meetings, if they knew they were open up, you would have a tremendous response. A tremendously positive response. Because most of us think this is a secret organization that only meets on Thursdays and Fridays between the hours of 6 and 11. No, it's just wonderful for us to really get a feel for what's going on. Please, put it in the newsletter. Okay.
okay. And Victor, one overarching comment here that is frustrating to me, and that is people like yourself and people like yourself and like Peter and have raised some really good questions and looked at other municipalities. Our challenge is planning staff have been looking at this for literally years, and the train's on the track now on a certain direction that is kind of, shall I say, almost set in stone. And some really good comments are coming in, but that ship has sailed to some extent. Patrick, Ken, can you help me say this another way?
David, we're running out of time here. We're 10 minutes past our targeted time. We still have committees and things to finish up here, and our associate members to speak too. So okay, all right. Well, if there aren't any more specific comments on that outline,
let's move on and maybe circle back with a subgroup of you involved in the zoning matter. Homeless, Peter, anything?
Pass.
Okay. Health and safety. Kathy, anything there?
No, let's pass on that, I think.
Okay. Transportation, Roger?
Well, I can repeat what Camden and Nick had to say, but I think we were pretty steeped in transportation this evening.
Okay. Then Bay Park, Bob, anything?
Just quickly, the Bay Park went before the planning commission a couple of weeks ago, requesting a zoning change for that facility, and it was turned down and voted down 4-1. I was a little surprised, frankly, that one of the things they were looking at was mixed use and housing units. I know it had been discussed in the past by AG Lafferty about having workforce housing there for people who work in the Bay Park. But I think it was something a lot of people weren't really prepared for and felt, it needs a little bit more public discussion and visibility.
Does he go to the commission now?
I don't know. So,
I would assume it does.
if it was voted down.
No, it
Or
automatically should go to the commission.
recommendation to the commission to deny.
Yeah, exactly.
But the question is whether they make modifications based upon what the feedback.
It was pretty passionate feedback.
Yeah.
Okay. Then CCNA, is Ted with us today?
No.
Okay. I can report that Ted tells me that he's going to be moving out of the area. So amongst things we need to consider is who will be DSCA's rep to CCNA. What's happened to date as Ted has been the delegate, so as to speak, and I've been the alternate. So I'm hoping that one of our board members would consider taking on that role. CCNA meets the first Saturday of every month from 9 to 11-ish. So that would be the commitment, so as to speak, most of the time. I'm prepared to continue to be the alternate if there's a consensus on that. Is there anybody on the board who would like to step up to be our CCNA rep?
Quick question, would you consider a member who is not on the board as a representative? Someone who goes to the CCNA meetings and is also really on this call, and he participates in those meetings. But I'd rather ask him personally before I propose it.
Well, and Ted was not.
Ted was not a board.
Right. So I have someone in mind who.
I represent Golden Gate Point Association at CCNA.
Oh, okay.
However, remember, I'm seasonal. And I just found out that they will be able to do Zoom because I'm up north for 4 months of the year or so. And so I don't know how it would come across to them to have one person designating. I don't think that would be good. But I am there, so I can always chime in and tell you what happened. I'm just not sure that I don't really feel it's right for me to represent groups. But I can always chime in or augment or whatever. And in some cases, if that person didn't go and I did, I can be substitute speaker. So, and there are even some meetings where I can't do it. So somebody else from GGPA goes. But just know that that's also a resource for you.
Well, Bob, sounds like you have someone that you're willing to talk with.
Okay. So.
Well,
I won't be, I have a meeting with them tomorrow, so I'll have some information for you by tomorrow.
Okay, good, Bob. And yeah, let's.
David, essentially, you would need to notify CCNA that you're going to be there on Saturday as the primary, and we could bring a guest. I mean, if somebody wanted to attend as the alternate until they're officially approved by the board, you could do it that way.
Right. Oh, okay, I'm on it. All right. All right, thanks. Any, with that said, Rosemary, updates, nothing really that wasn't handled in the transportation presentation by Camden. So I have nothing further from the Rosemary. With that said, Jamie, as far as platinum members, who might we have in the audience that would?
So let Michelle speak. Absolutely. Of course.
Hi, Michelle Colburn, Tamiami, and we are a full-service construction and general counsel law firm. So we fulfill your needs from construction feedback to contract reviews to general counsel work. We work with a lot of the downtown condos, represent them as general counsel and in the construction feedback aspect. We are hosting a Zoom video webinar next Thursday on the outcome of the legislative session that just happened and how the result will impact your condo association. So if you would like to be on that Zoom, just email me and I'll send you the link. And then the 17th, I invited an insurance attorney who strictly does property insurance litigation. She'll be here in Sarasota to discuss also the impact and the basics of property insurance and how it affects your HOA and what you need to know. So if you're new on the board of your condo, you may want to come listen to the basics of what it takes to enroll your insurance and make sure you have the right insurance. And that's at Marina Jones. That's it. What's that?
A card with your email so we can email it that way.
Sure.
We get a card.
Yep, yep. All right, thank you. You guys have a great night.
I don't think we have anybody else that's platinum right now, right? Just gold, okay.
Sure.
We have a City National Bank.
Hi, I'm Michelle Sadlowski, and I'm the AVP of City National Bank Association Services. So I cover the west coast of Florida. We deposits, reserve accounts, with all the state statute stuff going on and reserve accounts, all that stuff going on. We are lending. We also do insurance premium financing. So we know the costs of insurance costs rising. We do short-term loans for insurance premium financing. So we are the second largest Florida-based bank. We are still considered a community bank, $24 billion in assets. So we have all the tools and technology to offer while offering you personal service to handle all your financial needs. So happy to be here. This is my, I think, second or third time. So I'm fairly new still, so thank you for having me.
Good.
Okay, thank you.
And Steve from Howard.
Good evening, Steve Shaw, I'm Vice President of Sales for Howard Communications. We are a fiber optic internet and television provider exclusively to HOAs and condo associations. Since I am probably the last person between you and refreshments, I'll be brief, but I did want to say how much we value as associate members our involvement and support for DSCA. I think it's very important for you guys to all understand we have received a number of inquiries from both board members as well as association representatives. Some that is in the early stages of leading the business, others that just promotes conversation. And I want you all to understand that because yes, we support you financially. We get a lot out of it. In light of some of your conversations today about involving more of your members as subject matter experts, I would just encourage you to call upon your associate members. We would very much, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think we would very much be encouraged and excited about getting involved. I think please don't interpret what we're saying as being a commercial opportunity for us. Quite frankly, these kinds of support is to build name recognition and to build personal relationships. So please, if you want to reach out and call on us, certainly my firm, we've got national technology expertise that we can bring to some of your discussions. I know there are obviously other associate members with those with other kinds of things. So I would just encourage you and thank you for the opportunity. We will continue to support this organization in any way we can. Thanks very much.
And we do actually have one more, unless you have questions.
No, I just had a really valid point, so thanks.
Annika.
I'll try to make this fast, this is something you guys know.
Our new liaison.
Yes, which I'm very excited to be a part of and will help you guys a lot, obviously. And so I'm Anika Mantius. I'm with First Law Firm. We do construction defects litigation. We represent associations and condominiums with issues with the builder. That's all we do in Florida. We work on a contingency basis. We're a national law firm. Offices in Sarasota and Tampa, but we focus all throughout Florida. So you can reach out to me if you have questions, and we're happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did I miss any associate members? I don't think I did. I think everybody, there were 2 more on the call, but they're gone. That's it, David.
Oh, okay, and then our next board meeting is February 1st, and I'm happy to confirm that City Manager Brown has agreed to be our guest speaker. So I think it'll be very timely to have Marlon with us as we head into a budget season. And I look back and we had him in February of last year. So maybe we'll make an annual tradition of having our city manager be our speaker on an annual basis, maybe in February or sounds good. Is there any final comments anybody has?
Nice.
Yes, please. Okay.
Okay, all right, time for wine.
Wait,
So-
David, sorry. Please stand up so you can see you.
I'm Sherry Bumskeller. I represent OCL. I've been on Zoom for the last year. I had a question outside of what we discussed today. I'm on our executive board and we have been trying to address our board spending authority. And I was hoping anyone from different buildings might be willing to share what your board spending authority limit is and how you work that within your organizations. Separate and apart from what we're doing here, but it is a question based on sharing information if we can. And we don't have access to everyone's email, do we? There's only a response. So if, I don't know.
These are the kinds of ways we can do a topical question at times, or we include it in our annual survey, which is what we were talking about reactivating this year.
Okay, thank you.
We have a whole financial section,
Okay.
and we ask a series of questions, and I think it's one we should.
I would appreciate that, because I reached out last year, and David, I did leave a voicemail for you the other day. I was trying to figure out how to bring this up at the meeting.
Okay, I apologize for not getting back to you. So we'll work on that. We hear what you're saying, and that's important, I think, our annual survey and what else, but we'll certainly reach out to you, see how we can be of help.
Thank you.
So you're
Okay.
talking about spending authority cap without membership approval?
Yes,
Only by the board of directors?
by the board of directors. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? I'd like to thank the Vice Mayor for having been with us. And I'm, thanks to Nick and Camden for their great presentation. I'll be following up on some items there, possibly circulating some things to the board in advance of sending a communication to them. So thanks, everybody. Sorry we ran a little bit over, meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you